Hi, I'm Jake, 32, and last month my life blew up when I refused to apologize to my brother, the golden boy of our family. So I punched my brother. In the face. At our cousin's engagement party. Right between the bruschetta and the best man's speech. It was one of those slow-motion moments. Everyone turned, gasped, someone dropped a wine glass, my dad shouted my full name like I was 12 again, and my mom's face twisted like I just slapped Jesus himself. Meanwhile, Brandon, the beloved golden child, staggered back holding his jaw like I'd dislocated it. I hadn't. Unfortunately. Let me back up. Brandon's the reason I'm still living at home, broke, and now apparently taking time off to reflect. He's 4 years older, a neurosurgeon, drives a Tesla, eats quinoa voluntarily, and has our parents wrapped around his stethoscope. I, on the other hand, had been busting my ass in engineering school, working part-time to afford rent and books, and trying to keep my GPA high enough to graduate with honors. But none of that matters when Brandon walks into a room. The fight started when he made a joke about me dropping out soon. I wasn't. Not yet, anyway. He was sipping his wine, smirking in that condescending way only older siblings can master, and said, "How's the whole pretending you're not failing thing going?" I tried to brush it off. Really, I did. But then he added, "Mom and Dad told me you'll never make it as an engineer. You're just not like me." That's when something snapped. I saw red, then my fist moved before my brain caught up. Fast forward to now, my parents pulled me aside after the party and told me, in no uncertain terms, that until I apologized to Brandon they were cutting off support and pausing tuition payments. My final year. 1 semester left. Gone, because I bruised their perfect son's pride. I wish I could say I caved. That I said sorry, sucked it up, and got back to class. But I didn't. Instead, I packed my stuff, walked out, and did something I swore I'd never do. I called my Uncle Mark, the black sheep of the family, the dropout, the tattooed mechanic who hadn't been invited to the party in the first place. And when he picked up, all I said was, "Hey, you still got that spare room?" He laughed and said, "Thought you'd never ask." Uncle Mark's spare room smelled like WD-40, old books, and a little bit like weed, if I'm honest. But it had a bed, 4 walls, and most importantly, no Brandon. He handed me a beer on my first night and said, "So you finally saw through their bullsh*t, huh?" I nodded, staring at the cracked ceiling, feeling like a balloon someone had let all the air out of. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was the kind you get with someone who's been through their own family version of exile. Uncle Mark was the cautionary tale growing up. Dropped out of college to build motorcycles, refused to go to church, never married, and once got into a screaming match with my mom at Thanksgiving that ended with a turkey flying across the kitchen. But now, he owned a custom bike shop downtown, had 2 full-time employees, and more business than he could handle. "So what's the plan?" he asked. I didn't have one. My parents had made good on their threat. They emailed the school and revoked payment, pulled my name off the family health insurance, and even sent a screenshot of my emptied college fund account, which they technically controlled. Until graduation. It was like watching your life unravel in bullet points. I tried to get a part-time job at a cafe near campus. They hired me to wash dishes, minimum wage, and when a classmate walked in and saw me in a grease-stained apron, I almost crawled into the industrial sink. The same night, Brandon texted me. "You done playing the victim yet? Apologize. Come home. Grow up." I didn't respond. Instead, I spent my nights helping Uncle Mark in the garage. I'd hand him tools, hold parts, mostly stay out of the way. But one evening, while he was elbow-deep in a 1973 Honda CB750, he looked at me and said, "You ever think about learning to build one of these?" "No," I said. "I build bridges." Or, "I did." He raised an eyebrow. "Well, maybe now you build something different." That was the first time in weeks I felt something. Like maybe I wasn't just a walking failure in a hoodie. Like maybe I wasn't done yet. Then came the email from the dean's office. I clicked it expecting bad news. Instead, it said, "Due to changes in your financial aid, your enrollment is currently suspended. Please contact our office to discuss next steps." Suspended. Officially. All because I wouldn't apologize to Brandon for being an arrogant, insufferable ass. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall until Uncle Mark said, "You still want to build stuff? I might have a crazy idea." And that's when everything started to change. Uncle Mark's crazy idea came came at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was lying on the floor of the garage, scrolling through job listings that made me want to crawl into a volcano, when he walked in holding a tattered sketchbook and smelling like gasoline and peanut M&Ms. "You still got your design software on that laptop of yours?" he asked. "Yeah, why?" He dropped the sketchbook in my lap. Inside were pages of bike frame concepts, scribbled notes, technical specs that looked like a madman's diary if that madman was secretly a genius with a welding torch. "Been drawing these up for years," he said, tapping one page. "Custom street bike. Lightweight electric, but with old-school aesthetics. Thing is, I don't know how to run the numbers on torque, load distribution, balance. But you? You do." I blinked. "You want me to help you design a bike?" "I want us to build a bike. My dream. Your brains. We enter it into the Rumble Rally downtown in 6 weeks. Huge showcase. Big names. Win or lose, it'll get eyes on us. Maybe get you a job that doesn't involve paper hats and burnt coffee." It sounded completely insane. So obviously I said, "I'm in." The next few days turned into a blur. We sketched, argued, redesigned. I pulled out my laptop, cracked open my old CAD programs, and started modeling a frame around his engine layout. I'd never designed for anything like this before. Everything I'd done was about bridges, roads, static loads, not two-wheeled, high-speed chaos machines. But it felt good. Hell, it felt alive. Uncle Mark taught me how to weld, badly at first. I burned through 3 gloves, 1 hoodie, and nearly singed off my eyebrows. But every night we made progress. A real frame started to take shape. I was sore, greasy, exhausted, and somehow more fulfilled than I'd been in 4 years of classes. And then Brandon showed up. I came home from a parts run, and there he was, standing in the garage like he owned the place, wearing some smug country club vest like he was about to judge a wine competition. "Wow," he said, glancing around. "Didn't know you were into poverty cosplay now." I dropped the box of parts on the floor harder than necessary. "What do you want?" I asked, wiping my hands on my jeans. He smiled, that awful, performative smile he used on nurses and dates and our parents. "Mom and Dad are still worried about you. They asked me to reach out." "No, they didn't." "Okay," he admitted, shrugging. "I volunteered. Because honestly, this little tantrum of yours has gone on long enough. You made your point. You're mad. We get it. Just apologize so we can all move on." I stared at him. The audacity in that moment was actually stunning. Like watching someone light your house on fire and then hand you a mop. "Is that what you told them?" I said quietly. "That I'm just having a tantrum?" He scoffed. "You punched me in front of Grandma. You humiliated me. Again. For the 100th time. God, you're so sensitive. No wonder you can't finish school." That did it. I walked right up to him, covered in grease and sweat, and said, "You're not the reason I left school." "They are. But you? You're the reason I'll never go back." He tilted his head. "So that's it? You're throwing away your future over pride?" "No," I said. "I'm finally building one." Then Uncle Mark stepped out of the back, arms crossed, looking every bit the intimidating biker uncle he was. Brandon looked at him. Then at me. Then smirked. "Right. Good luck with your little toy bike." As he turned to leave, I called after him. "You might want to stop by the Rumble Rally next month. It'll be nice for you to see what success looks like when it's earned." He didn't reply. But that night, Uncle Mark cracked open 2 beers and handed me one. "Well," he said, "that was fun." I raised my bottle. "To building things they'll never understand." We clinked bottles. And somewhere deep inside me, the part that used to feel like a disappointment started to feel like a beginning. We named it the Ghost. A matte black, cafe racer-inspired electric motorcycle with a custom-built aluminum frame, low-slung profile, and a motor so quiet it purred like a house cat with secrets. Uncle Mark said it looked like something Batman would ride if he were broke but stylish. I called it the most beautiful thing I'd ever helped create. For 6 weeks, we barely slept. We welded, sanded, resanded, 3D printed mounts for the battery case, and argued over things like spoke angles and handlebar height like we were pitching to NASA. Mark's garage turned into a cross between a tech startup and a Mad Max film set. And I was all in. But not everything was sunshine and engine oil. My bank account was circling the drain, and my student email was officially deactivated. Friends from college stopped reaching out. A few even unfollowed me on social media after Brandon posted a family photo captioned, "Some bridges don't need rebuilding." Classy. My parents? Radio silence. Not a call. Not a text. Just silence. Which honestly hurt more than I let on. But every time I started to spiral, I'd go back into the garage, sit on the half-built ghost, and remind myself, they stopped supporting me. I never stopped believing in myself. Then came the week of the Rumble Rally. Uncle Mark pulled me aside, greasy rag in one hand, serious face on. "We're not just showing up," he said. "We're going to win." I laughed. "You do realize we're competing against guys who've been building for decades, right?" He just grinned. "And they've never had you on their team." I stared at him, surprised by how much that meant. I'd been called a failure, a burden, a disappointment. But never someone worth betting on. The night before the event, we loaded the ghost into Mark's old trailer, tied it down with the kind of care usually reserved for bomb disposal, and drove to the expo center. The Rumble Rally wasn't just some dinky local competition. It was huge. Hundreds of bikes, food trucks, music, reporters, and influencers walking around with ring lights like they were filming a perfume ad. Our booth was small, just a bike, a banner that read, "Black Sheep Customs," and two guys in oil-stained jeans pretending we belonged there. But from the moment the ghost hit the pavement, people stopped. Stared. Whispered, "What the hell is that? That's electric? No way. Looks like Tron and a Ducati had a baby." Even a couple of big-name builders came over, poked around, asked questions. One of them, some legend from Oregon with a ZZ Top beard, asked for my card. I did not have a card. But I scribbled my number on a napkin like a total amateur and tried not to scream. Then came the judging. There were 4 categories: design, innovation, performance, and build quality. The judges wore sunglasses indoors and carried clipboards like they were conducting FBI investigations. One of them was a YouTuber with 2 million subscribers. Another used to design for Tesla. They asked me questions about materials, weight distribution, regenerative braking. I answered every single one like I was defending a thesis. And then came the test ride. We watched, barely breathing, as one of the judges mounted the ghost and took off down the closed course. For 30 glorious seconds, our creation flew, smooth, fast, silent. When he returned, he took off the helmet, grinning from ear to ear. "That thing," he said, "is AF ****ing Phantom." When they announced the winners, we didn't expect a place. Not really. But then, in second place, for excellence in design and innovation, Black Sheep Customs with the ghost. The crowd clapped. Uncle Mark lifted me off the ground like I was a Little League MVP. I hadn't smiled that hard in years. That night, after loading up the trailer and inhaling 2 burgers and a questionable funnel cake, my phone buzzed. "Brandon. Nice win. Didn't think you had it in you." I stared at the screen for a second. Then typed, "Didn't need you to," and blocked his number. That night, I lay awake in the garage loft, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I'd built. 2 weeks after the Rumble Rally, I was sitting at Uncle Mark's kitchen table eating cold spaghetti out of a Tupperware when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, figured it was either a scam or someone trying to sell me an extended warranty on a car I didn't own. But something told me to answer. "Jake Peters?" the voice said. Calm, professional, definitely not a robocall. Yeah? This is Layla from Volt Dynamics. One of our engineers saw your project at the Rumble Rally. We were very impressed. Would you be open to an interview?" I nearly dropped my fork into the spaghetti. Yes. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Great. How's Thursday at 10? I barely slept that night. Uncle Mark looked more excited than I was, like I was going on a date with the CEO. "Dress like someone who knows how to weld and talk to people," he advised, tossing me a clean button-down he hadn't worn since his cousin's 3rd wedding. The interview was in a sleek building with a minimalist lobby and furniture I wasn't sure I was allowed to sit on. The receptionist gave me a name badge and a bottle of cucumber-infused water. Cucumber-infused, like I was auditioning for a life I hadn't realized I could belong to. 3 people interviewed me, an engineer with a man bun and steel-toe boots, a woman with cat-eye glasses who grilled me on load calculations, and a VP named Simon who kept tapping his pen like he had somewhere more important to be. They asked about the ghost, about how I'd balance design with performance, about why I didn't finish my engineering degree. That last one made me pause. I swallowed. I was supposed to finish this year, but my family pulled financial support after I stood up to some toxic dynamics. I wasn't going to apologize for something I didn't do just to keep their money. So I left. The room went quiet. I thought I'd blown it. Then Simon nodded once and said, "Good." 1 week later, I got the offer. Junior engineer. Full-time. Real salary. Health benefits. I stared at the email so long I thought the screen would melt. Then I screamed so loud Uncle Mark dropped his wrench and nearly called the fire department. When I told him, he pulled me into the greasiest bear hug ever. "Knew it," he said. "You've got brains and balls. That's a rare combo." The next few days were a whirlwind. I got a haircut, bought pants that actually fit, and showed up to work terrified someone would figure out I didn't belong. But by day 3, I was in design meetings, sketching prototypes, and troubleshooting build issues like I'd been doing it for years. And I loved it. I still went to the garage on weekends. The Ghost was now our shop mascot. Mark had even started getting calls for custom builds from people who saw it at the rally. We weren't rich, but the phone was ringing, and the lights stayed on. Then, on a sleepy Sunday afternoon, my mom texted me for the first time in months. "Your father and I heard you got a job. Brandon told us. We're glad you've come to your senses. Maybe now we can talk about enrolling you back in school and finishing properly." I stared at the message like it was a joke. Like she'd missed the entire damn point. But instead of replying, I sent her a picture of me in my Volt Dynamics shirt, standing next to the Ghost, with Uncle Mark giving a greasy thumbs up in the background. No caption. Just the photo. A few hours later, she responded. "We're worried about the path you're on. This isn't the future we envisioned for you." And for the first time in my life, I realized I was okay with that. Because I was finally choosing my future. And I wasn't going back. 2 months into my new job, I was walking through Volt Dynamics' prototyping lab when my supervisor, Ari, a brilliant woman with a resting death glare and a soft spot for bike nerds, waved me over. "Got someone I want you to meet," she said, nodding toward a man in an expensive jacket and the kind of perfect haircut that screams I pay someone else to mow my life. I froze. It was Brandon. "Dr. Brandon Peters," he said, extending his hand like we just met at a conference, and not in a childhood filled with psychological warfare and one unforgettable right hook. I stared at him, blinked once, then reluctantly shook his hand, mostly because Ari was watching and I really liked having a job. "What are you doing here?" I asked, doing my best not to let my voice rise into pure disbelief. Brandon smiled his smug, polished, TV ad for mouthwash smile. "Consulting. Neurotech integration for ride stability systems. Volt brought me on board last week." I felt like the floor dipped under me. Ari clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Didn't realize you two already knew each other." "Oh, we're brothers," Brandon said quickly. "Jake's the rebel genius. I'm the boring doctor who just got lucky." He laughed. "I did not." Ari raised an eyebrow. "Huh. Small world." When she walked off, Brandon leaned in. "Nice setup. Cool bike. Heard about the rally. Good for you." I crossed my arms. "So what, you're slumming it in engineering now?" "I'm expanding," he said. "Neural interface is the next frontier. Thought I'd be ahead of the curve." "Of course you did." He stepped closer. "Mom and Dad were thrilled to hear you're working again. Thought maybe we could all grab dinner soon. Clear the air." I blinked. "Clear the air? You mean pretend nothing happened?" His jaw tensed just slightly. "Come on, Jake. You're doing well. They just want things to go back to normal." I looked him dead in the eye. "There is no normal anymore. There's before you helped them cut me off, and there's now. And now doesn't involve fake family dinners so we can play pretend in public." He sighed. Still holding a grudge. "Nope," I said, stepping past him. "I'm holding boundaries. Try it sometime." I walked off before he could say another word. That night I got a call from my mom. Straight to voicemail. "Jake, sweetheart, we heard Brandon ran into you at work. He said you seemed tense. Look, I know things got complicated, but we're your parents. We only wanted what was best for you. Please don't shut us out." I stared at the ceiling of my garage loft for a long time after that. Uncle Mark found me there, sitting on the Ghost in the dark, holding my phone like it was a landmine. He handed me a soda. "Let me guess. Guilt grenade from the mothership? I laughed, just a little. Why does it still bother me? Because you haven't stopped loving them, he said. You just stopped letting them hurt you. That takes time. I nodded. The next day at work, Ari pulled me aside again. I've got a new project. Cutting-edge chassis design, experimental materials, fully electric. We want you to lead the first phase. I blinked. Me? Led? You built a rally-winning bike in a garage with a mechanic and a dream, she said. You're more than ready. And just like that, I was. I led my first project. I pitched my own designs. I signed off on blueprints. I started thinking about grad school, but on my terms, paid by me, not some family puppet strings. Brandon kept his distance at work after that. We were polite, professional, strangers with a shared past. It was perfect. And then, 3 days before my birthday, I got a letter. From my parents. Handwritten. Inside was a check. $20,000. And a note. We're proud of you. We didn't understand before. Maybe we still don't. But we want to support you now. Use this for school. Or not. Just know the door is open. I stared at it for a long, long time. Then I put the check in my desk drawer unopened. Maybe I'd cash it one day. Maybe I wouldn't. But for the first time, I knew either choice would be mine. 2 months after my parents mailed me that check, I mailed it back. Not with a dramatic note, or some angsty monologue about boundaries and emotional betrayal. Just a post-it stuck to the envelope that said, "Thank you, but I've already invested in something better." And I had. The Ghost had blown up online after the Rumble rally. A tech vlogger with 6 million subscribers did a feature on it. Our Instagram account went from 237 followers to over 90,000 in a week. Suddenly, we were getting inquiries from collectors, influencers, even 2 boutique shops in L.A., asking if we took commissions. Uncle Mark and I incorporated Black Sheep Customs officially. He handled the tools, I handled the tech and design. We built bikes that didn't just move, they meant something. Every one we built came with a tiny metal plate under the seat. We built from the wreckage. And business? Was booming. I still worked part-time at Volt Dynamics. Ari gave me a hybrid role that let me keep my health insurance and tinker in peace. Turns out companies love engineers who know how to weld and also survive a complete emotional collapse. And Brandon? Well, he did what Brandon always does, landed a feature in Forbes about his groundbreaking work fusing neuroscience and ride stabilization tech. Didn't mention Volt once. Didn't mention me either. Classic. I saw him at the annual company mixer a few weeks later. He gave me a tight smile from across the room, lifted his glass like a peace offering. I nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just acceptance. Some people don't change. Some people don't need to. But I had. One night, Uncle Mark and I were sitting in the garage again, beer in hand, the Ghost parked next to 2 new builds still in progress. He looked at me and said, "If I croak tomorrow, you're running this place." "Dude," I said, "you literally ate an entire pizza and bench pressed a motorcycle last week. You're not croaking anytime soon." He grinned. "I'm serious. You built this with me. You made something real. Out of nothing." I nodded. "Out of spite. Let's not forget that part." He laughed. "The best fuel there is." Sometimes, when it's late and I'm the last one in the garage, I walk over to the Ghost and just sit on it. Not to ride it. Just to remember. Where I came from. What I lost. And what I built. Not with apologies. But with grit, grease, and a middle finger aimed politely at everyone who told me I wasn't enough. Because now? I am. And it turns out. That's more than enough. Also, between you and me? I finally looked at that check again last week. Still unopened. Still sitting in my drawer. And every day I leave it there, untouched, feels like a bigger win than cashing it ever could. Besides, Uncle Mark and I have been talking expansion. Second garage. New hires. Bigger builds. Turns out being the black sheep just means you're not part of their herd. And honestly, that's the best thing that ever happened to me.